Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we are unpacking a really fascinating logical blueprint that's actually found in ancient texts and scholarly commentary. We're going to dive into the incredible journey of human creation, specifically your creation, and look at how these sources use observable, everyday biology to argue for the concept of resurrection. Now, just to be super clear right off the bat, we aren't here to take any theological sides today. Instead, we're just impartially examining the sheer structural logic of the texts and looking at how a microscopic cell transforming into a fully grown human is framed as profound, undeniable evidence for a second life. So let me ask you this. Have you ever considered that your journey from a single cell to your current form is, in a way, your very first resurrection? I mean, really reflect on your own physical origins for a second. You literally started out as a microscopic entity, just a single fertilized egg. And from there, your cells divided at absolutely lightning speed. To put that into perspective, you went from one cell to eventually creating around 37 trillion cells by the time you're an adult. You transitioned into an embryo, and finally, into a fully formed human being capable of reasoning and logic. The sources we're analyzing today challenge us to view this massive leap from near-nothingness to staggering complexity as a resurrection all on its own. And this brings us to kind of a wild paradox highlighted by our sources. Why doubt a second transformation when you've already lived through the first? As humans, we pretty much universally accept the biological miracle of our birth, right? We know what happened. Yet many people remain entirely skeptical about a second creation. The philosophical texts argue a really simple point of logic here. Basically, if you have already beaten the completely impossible odds to be created the first time, why is a second transformation met with such profound doubt? Part 1. A philosophical look at this second creation. To really understand this argument, let's look at a direct translation from the Qur'an. It reads, "Does man not consider that we created him from a mere sperm drop? Then at once he is a clear adversary?" The text is drawing a really stark contrast here. It's pointing out the extreme physical humility of our biological origins, literally just a mere drop of fluid. Yet, despite coming from such microscopic, humble beginnings, humans often grow up to become what the text calls a clear adversary, meaning we become arrogant and totally resistant to the very concept of a subsequent creation. Building right on top of that ancient text, the Islamic scholar Badi'uzzahman Said Nursi frames the argument like this. You already see the process you undergo from a drop of water to an embryo, and from an embryo to human creation. Notice how Nursi relies entirely on observable phenomena here. He's emphasizing that this isn't some hidden, mystical secret, It's a highly visible biological reality. He uses this undeniable empirical evidence to support the broader philosophical concept of resurrection. Let's unpack the real core of this scholar's argument, because it's actually quite brilliant. Think about the first creation. It is witnessed, it's highly complex, and it starts from a simple drop of water. That is an undeniable fact. It happens every day. Then, consider the second creation, which is widely doubted. The logical crux of the argument is simply this. If that incredibly complex first creation is an undeniably proven fact, well then a second creation is logically similar. In fact, the texts argue it is conceptually much easier to simply repeat a process than it is to initiate it from absolute scratch. Part 2. The power of personal experience. You already experienced existence from nothing without any memory or will. This is a super profound reminder derived straight from the source text. I mean, think about it. None of us remember our time in the womb. You didn't consciously will your heart to start beating or sit there drafting up a blueprint for your lungs to form, right? It just happened. But just because you can't remember this miraculous development, that doesn't mean it didn't happen to you. You are literally sitting here right now as the living proof that it did. And this leads us to the logical synthesis of the whole argument. The exact same power can easily do it a second time. The sources state that whatever mechanism was required to create you without your will or your memory, that very first time is entirely logically capable of replicating that exact same process again. If a lack of memory or conscious participation didn't stop your first creation, it logically just cannot be used as a valid reason to deny the possibility of a second one. Part 3. Seeking the miracle within. These sources outline a pretty remarkable sequence. Looking at verses from Surah Al-Mu'minun, we see a very distinct progression. Step 1, created from an essence of clay. Step 2, placed as a drop in a safe place, which is referring to the womb. And step 3, transformed into an embryo. What is so captivating here is seeing how closely an ancient text maps onto actual documented biological stages of human development. way before the invention of microscopes. The sources use this highly specific sequence to argue that if this precise process brings you into existence once, a second existence operates on that exact same precedent. Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative question based on everything we've unpacked today. When you think about your first creation in the womb, do you find it ordinary or extraordinary? Because these texts are ultimately challenging us to stop taking our own biology for granted and to really reevaluate the supposedly mundane reality of our existence. If your journey from a tiny microscopic cell to the person you are today is truly extraordinary, then perhaps the concept of a second transformation isn't so illogical after all. Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and keep questioning the incredible world within you.